the Victory Studios in downtown Little Rock, this is Capitol View.
And good Sunday morning to you. Welcome to Capitol View. I'm Jay Burr. Well, we finally get to complete our complete delegation circle here as we finally bring in Senator Tom Cotton. He's been a busy guy here. Senator, we certainly do appreciate the time. How have you been?
Been good, Jay. Hope you've been doing well yourself.
All right. Let's get into things here. I know we're kind of getting into campaign season and everything like that, but I do want to touch on a couple of things here. Obviously, the pandemic is at the forefront of everybody's mind. I guess just in your opinion, and we all understand this has been a very unprecedented thing that's been going on, but how do you think Washington has sort of handled this and even trickling down here into the state of Arkansas? What's your take?
Well, obviously, it's been a challenging year. They call it a novel coronavirus for a reason. We still had a lot to learn when we passed the CARES Act in March. But I think the CARES Act did help Arkansans tremendously. It helped businesses keep their employees on payroll. For those people who've been laid off, it gave them a healthy bump up in unemployment, provided a lot of families with direct checks to help them keep food on the table and a roof over the heads of their kids. It's also helped accelerate the production of vaccine, which is the way we're ultimately going to put this behind us, in my opinion. Sometimes these vaccines can take years and years to develop. I hope that we'll have a vaccine to the market in the first quarter of next year, no later than the second quarter. So that might be just 1 year. So that was a huge, huge success of the CARES Act. Obviously, we still have a lot of people who are struggling in Arkansas, though. I mean, schools are back open. A lot of businesses have been reopened. But if you're a waitress or a busboy, maybe you do concessions at a sporting venue or a movie theater, it's still very tough times. So for several months, I believe we need a new virus relief package. We're still working on that. I'm still certainly working on it. I just want to make sure that we're putting money where the need is, and that we're not spending money that has nothing to do with the coronavirus at all. And that's one of the big sticking points has been with Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats in the House.
Well, kind of touch on that a little bit. How do you balance out some of that spending? Because we understand, there's a lot of money that needs to be flowing to keep the economy going. You mentioned jobs, things like that. But how do you get to that point where you just don't spend, the national debt even further down that rabbit hole?
Yeah, well, I think most Arkansans believe that we needed to spend what was necessary to help families and help businesses, especially back in March and April, at the height of the uncertainty about the pandemic. But again, now that we know so much more about this virus, now that treatments have improved so much, most Arkansans want to put the money where the need is. And it's very disappointing to me to see that Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats in the House, for instance, want to use this as an opportunity to bail out cities and states that have long-standing fiscal problems, like Chicago and Illinois, problems that have nothing to do with the virus whatsoever. Unfortunately, the Democrats in the Senate continue to block our efforts to pass a bill on which they agree. The Democrats in the Senate don't oppose providing more funds to people who are out of work or businesses that are in industries still facing restrictive government orders at the state and local level. It's just that they're not getting everything they want on unrelated priorities. So that's been a disappointment of mine, but we'll keep at it for as long as it takes.
And I guess kind of sticking with the whole health theme we've got going on here, the Affordable Care Act kind of been a little bit of controversy. It's been tweaked a little bit here and there throughout the years here. Is there anything else, going forward, especially now having dealt with the pandemic and some of the needs that are out there, kind of what do we look at going forward? Do we completely dismantle this thing, or is there some other proposals that you've seen and heard floating around?
Well, we have over the last 4 years repealed or modified some of the worst parts of Obamacare. So for instance, about 7,000 Arkansans were being taxed for not being able to afford the insurance that Obamacare made unaffordable in the first place. But in 2017, as part of our tax bill on my initiative, Congress repealed that tax. We also repealed a tax that labor unions hated on their high value insurance plans. But still, there's too many burdens and regulations on the insurance plans of Arkansans, too many choices taken out of the hands of individuals. We have a very diverse state, and a young man or woman who's 24 years old has different healthcare needs than a family of 5 with young kids versus elderly Arkansans. And Arkansans should be able to have more choices about their own health insurance rather than the one-size-fits-all dictates of Obamacare. So that's another thing I focused on. And also in the healthcare area, I've also really focused on trying to bring down the cost of prescription drugs. For instance, by trying to get generic drugs to the market faster. So there's more choice and competition that'll bring down the price of drugs for Arkansans, especially for Arkansas seniors. We're trying to make sure that big drug companies aren't gaming the system through clever lawyering to protect their old patents. So steps like those that, again, protect the intellectual property of companies that innovate and create the amazing drugs that help extend the lives of Arkansans, but at the same time, reward them for that innovation. Don't reward them for clever lawyering.
I know one of the bigger things that has come up this past year has been just sort of the racial tensions here, not just here in Arkansas, but throughout the United States. Police reform being kind of at the center of those things. Is there anything that you're seeing or you're supporting, even bringing forward in terms of police reform that you want to see discussed a little more in depth?
Well, the first thing that I would oppose is any effort to defund the police or even to cut police budgets. I've spoken to so many police chiefs and sheriffs across the state, and as anyone who's been part of a large organization, been in the military, knows that when you have constrained budgets, usually the first thing that goes is training. You rarely cut personnel or pay or benefits. You can't cut equipment. You can't send police out without body armor, without body cameras, without firearms and ammunition. But what you can do is cut training. That's the exact opposite of what so many of the reformers on the left claim to want. We should have more money for training to help officers deal with the very challenging circumstances that they face out on the streets. There are many other initiatives that we are willing to pass in the Senate that Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina had helped author, but unfortunately the Democrats in the Senate filibustered that. I think they preferred to have an issue for the campaign rather than have an outcome. But if they wanted to go to the polls this fall talking about supporting the police, which is what I do and what most Republicans do versus defunding police, that's a conversation we're happy to have.
Oh, and we can have plenty of those conversations, but unfortunately, Senator, we are bumping up on time here, but we certainly do appreciate the time. We know you got a lot going on up there in D.C. We got to jazz that office up just a little bit for future appearances here. Senator Tom Cotton, again, boss, we do appreciate the time.
Thank you very much.
You bet. We'll do it again soon. All right, and coming up after the break, we actually talk with the other candidate in this race here, Ricky Dale Harrington, the Libertarian running against Senator Tom Cotton. That's coming up next here. Stay with us on Capitol View.
You're watching Capitol View, Sunday morning talk focused on the political scene in Arkansas.
And welcome back into Capitol View. He is the lone challenger to Senator Cotton's seat, Libertarian Ricky Dale Harrington. He started from the bottom, and it was here, and now he's here once again with us here. Boss, we certainly do appreciate the time. Let's just jump right into things here. COVID-19, one of the big things that we've seen throughout 2020. I guess just in your opinion, how do you think Washington and even further on down the line, even Arkansas has handled the pandemic?
Well, as I've said before, the number one issue I have with the response to this pandemic is how it's been politicized and how we are, arguing amongst ourselves whether we should wear a mask or whether we should not wear a mask. And it's just a clear divide. And I wish that at the beginning, we'd had leadership that had taken the opinion of scientists and given the people a clear plan for their businesses, for their families, and how we can live under this, so we can make it through it. And I just hope that in the future, we can learn from our mistakes. So, there'll be a plan that, regardless of the administration, regardless of whether it's Republican or Democrat, there'll be a plan of action to deal with these type of events and try to mitigate extreme loss of life and any type of economic fallout that would happen because of this.
And I guess too, if you make it into office there, how do you strike that balance? Because that's been one of the big things we've asked a lot of candidates is from being compassionate. You've got to help people out. The federal government has that responsibility to a certain degree, but also, too, how do you do so responsibly and not necessarily spend into the country into a further hole than what it already is?
Well, I think we need to learn how to spend our money wisely. There's no reason we should be paying $500 or $2,000 for toilets and $500 for hammers. The government just needs to learn how to do a better job at the money that it has been given by the people, and be good stewards. And, sometimes we have to make these atypical decisions at the government level to mitigate something that could be catastrophic. I think that the stimulus was the right move at the time. It's just adding an extra level of difficulty for us as a nation, because we're going to have to find a way to deal with that money that we spent in the future. And so, as a senator, I would want to try to find the balance of, hey, if this is not going to work, if it's not something that we need, then we don't need to spend money on it. We do that in our households. Have to tighten up the belt, have to do the right thing.
And two, just sticking with health, the Affordable Care Act has been polarizing on both sides of this aisle here. I guess you offer a little different perspective being a sort of an outsider if you make it into office there. But, how would you go about bringing forth any change? Or is the Affordable Care Act, in your opinion, kind of A-OK where it currently stands?
Well, I have a strange opinion, and I think maybe we can take a look at the Affordable Care Act and repurpose it to be a kind of like testing the waters for a single payer system, or what it would be like. People that want to participate in the ACA, let that be the Medicare for all, so to speak, or a smaller version of it, and see if we can build from that. And then we don't want people, if people do not want to participate in that, we should give them the option. People need more options. And to go further in talking about healthcare, we need to find a way to separate people's employment and their healthcare. A lot of people lost their jobs because of COVID-19, and in losing their jobs, they lost their health insurance. And one part of the ACA is that you can't have employer health insurance and receive, benefits from the Affordable Care Act. And so that might need to be looked at.
Another big thing we've seen just creeping up in 2020 is just racial relations in this country. A lot of it, though, centered around, policing in this country, police reform. Is there anything specific that you want to try to bring to the table when it does come to police reform?
Well, it's sad that after months of protests and community events and the people coming together, I'm actually seeing more work being done at the local level than I have taken a look at what's being done in Washington right now. Congressman Amash had introduced a bill to end qualified immunity, and it didn't go anywhere because of the theatrics that are continued to be played in Washington, D.C. But I am extremely proud of the people of Arkansas, and I've seen people come together. Just yesterday, I was in Fort Smith, and Chief of Police was there. It was an event, a candlelight vigil for Breonna Taylor. And if we keep having events like this, it's going to take those little small community-led events that's going to lead to a change in our culture. And we have to see our fellow human beings as human beings and not people to be brought down and completely destroyed because they have different political ideas than we do. And that's what it's going to take, loving human beings as ourselves.
And I guess something that we can ask you that we can't necessarily ask, Democrats and Republicans is, you're coming in here as a libertarian. So if elected, pretty sure you'd be just on an island of your own as, I guess, as the Libertarian Caucus or however you guys want to sort of put it here. How do you think about approaching that environment, kind of just being sort of a lone wolf if you are elected by the people?
Well, I've spent a lot of my life being that lone wolf. And just building bridges with people. It's one of the favorite things to do in my life is to make friends with people. and especially turning enemies into friends. You know, how do you defeat your enemy? Well, you turn them into your friend. You know, we need a little bit more than that. So I'll work with Republicans, Democrats in the Senate to try to help, you know, get things passed for the people. And also, hopefully, you know, get some libertarian legislation passed as well. That's the hope.
I guess that's the whole point. You got to represent the party still. Ricky Dale Harrington, a candidate for senator. He is racing for Tom Cotton's seat here. You have a friend in here with Capitol View. You're more than welcome anytime, and we'll have to do it again soon.
I deeply appreciate that, Mr. Burr. I really do.
All right. Well, we appreciate you. Best of luck in the elections here. All right. When we come back, we have got a look at some of the ballot initiatives here in Arkansas. You're watching Capitol View on Sunday morning. Arkansas voters will see 3 issues on the ballot this November. Issue 1 is a major piece to the governor's highway plan going forward, as it could generate upwards of $300 million for roads, at least based on projections. But opponents of Issue 1 think this tax is just political gamesmanship. Issue 1 on the November ballot will make permanent the 0.5% sales tax that was set to expire in June of 2023. Supporters say this sales tax is crucial to Arkansas's road maintenance budget going forward.
We're kind of in an environment now with our highway department where through enhancements in fuel mileage with the cars and more people moving to electric vehicles and stuff, that our road tax, which is from the gasoline, is a declining source of revenue.
Detractors to the proposed amendment say this tax was only meant to be temporary and that RDOT could do better in prioritizing its budget and stretching it further.
Is that you should be upset about the state of your highways and your bridges, because they have only been budgeting $190 million per year for 16,400 miles of state road. That's less than 10% of their $2.6 billion 2019 total operations budget.
The biggest argument presented is, does a tax belong in the state's constitution? Supporters say it provides a permanent cash flow specifically for highways. Those against it don't think this is a constitutional item.
That's the place that we set the structure for our state government and that we enshrine individual rights that are very near and dear to us. It's not for just the day-to-day operations of our tax policy.
This gives us something permanent so that we have a little bit more consistency to be able to budget for planning down the road for highways.
This tax proposal also helps fund municipal and county road budgets as well.
And that a lot of people don't talk about is that only 70% of the monies then go to the highway department. 30% are divided by the cities and counties for their local projects.
Now, revenue generated from Act 416 of 2019, which adds a 3 cents per gallon on gasoline, 6 cents for diesel, an increase in hybrid vehicle registration, and the tax revenue on casino gaming also goes specifically towards highways. So opponents of Issue 1 believe this tax still won't be enough, and RDOT will eventually ask for more. Issue 2 would make a change for term limits for Arkansas legislators. The biggest change with Issue 2 is the removal of the lifetime cap. Now, currently, legislators can serve for 16 years in both chambers, and then that's it. You're done. What Issue 2 does is allow those who have served for 12 consecutive years to be able to come back after a period of 4 years off. Now, if there are any breaks in between, though, the clock resets. So if a lawmaker serves 8 years and then gets voted out, they would actually be eligible for the full 12 years if reelected in the next cycle. Now, some fear this would create more career politicians, while proponents of the amendment say that scenario pretty unlikely.
And historically speaking, in the 15 states across the country that have term limits, those that don't have lifetime caps, generally speaking, less than 5% of legislators ever return after leaving office.
We don't want career politicians. We prefer the founders' view of citizen legislators, not professional legislators.
One caveat is the 2-year senators in the next apportionment will not have those 2 years count towards their service time. Also, all current legislators would be grandfathered in under the 16-year time frame that is currently in place. And once they get to that 16 years, then they would have to be out for the 4 years before jumping back into the fray. The big overhaul with petitioning for citizen-initiated acts. That is Issue 3, and it would change the required number of counties to have signatures from 15 to 45. And in each of those counties, there must be at least 5% of the number of votes from the previous gubernatorial election. Now, this amendment would also eliminate the cure period for those signatures. Currently, a group can turn in signatures, and then they're granted a 30-day window to come up with required number if they fall short because some are thrown off or you see duplicates. Now, signatures would have to be turned in by January 15th, and any challenge must be made by April 15th of the election year. Proponents say this will eliminate confusion if a measure is thrown off and it won't appear as a dead issue on the ballot. Now, those in favor of Amendment 3 say this will strengthen grassroots efforts in Arkansas, while opponents say this will effectively kill grassroots initiatives altogether.
And encourage those true grassroots Arkansas efforts. I think it's going to help them out because they'll actually be broader support across the board, and they'll have their message out in those 45 counties.
The way that this law will change, there's no way a grassroots group can ever get anything on the ballot, ever.
Issue 3 would also raise the threshold for the legislature to propose amendments. Currently, it takes just a simple majority. Issue 3 would actually hike that up to a 3/5 vote in each chamber, so from 18 to 21 votes in the Senate and 51 to 60 votes in the House. The U.S. government has concluded that Iranian intelligence was responsible for a recent campaign of emails sent to intimidate Florida voters. The FBI adding Russia was also working to influence the election. The emails ominously instructed Democratic voters in Florida to switch to the Republican Party and purported to come from the Proud Boys. But the emails were actually spoofed and designed to incite social unrest and damage President Trump, according to John Ratcliffe, director of the National Intelligence.
First, we have confirmed that some voter registration information has been obtained by Iran and separately by Russia. This data can be used by foreign actors to attempt to communicate false information to registered voters that they hope will cause confusion, sow chaos, and undermine your confidence in American democracy.
We are not going to tolerate foreign interference in our elections or any criminal activity that threatens the sanctity of your vote or undermines public confidence in the outcome of the election.
Voter intimidation operation apparently used email addresses obtained from state voter registration lists. Federal officials have long warned about the possibility of this type of operation. And if you're at the polls and notice any irregularities or are being told you can't vote or you aren't registered when you should be, let us know about it. You can send us an email to workingforyou@krk.com or give us a call at 340-4448. This is for voters or poll workers. And remember, you can remain anonymous. And we are back to wrap it up after this. You're watching Capitol View on Sunday morning.
You're watching Capitol View, Sunday morning talk focused on the political scene in Arkansas.
Well, that is it. I'm out of paper. I'm out of time. We are back with an all-new Capitol View next week. Make sure you get the Capitol View podcast wherever you enjoy your podcast. Also enjoy the rest of your weekend. We'll see you again next week.